Hi, I am Mary. I'm a pickle in recovery. This is really weird. I wanted to unmute when it was time for the meeting to start, and I forgot that I wasn't hosting. I have 586 days of not drinking today. I This home group has gotten me sober pretty much, kept me sober, but I guess I'll start at the beginning. I was raised in a good home. I grew up in South Orange County, California. I I think my parent I was we moved about around a lot, but that's where we ended up when I was in first grade, and I grew up there until forever. Um, I Sorry, I have ADHD and my brain is all over the place, but it's okay. Um, my parents were what I would call functioning alcoholics. My dad would work, and then he would come home from work and drink. They were party animals before I was born, but and I think I was a needy child, um, and they didn't give me everything I needed emotionally. At least my dad didn't. I wanted him around more, but otherwise, I don't have a lot of the trauma and stuff that a lot of people do have end up here. But it was at least to the point that I was never going to drink. I never wanted to be like my parents. Um, I thought that drinking was a big problem. My dad smoked weed. I didn't find that out till later, like when I was a teenager, but that also didn't appeal to me. None of it appealed to me, and I never wanted to drink. I also, growing up, I had undiagnosed mental illness, and so that was a journey getting to what that was. As I mentioned, I think the final answer was ADHD, which comes with a lot of stuff, and they don't really, I don't think they really even know what that means in little girls, because it was all of still most of the studies show what it looks like in little boys. So that was like my childhood was good, but I was definitely undiagnosed. I think my parents were both undiagnosed with ADHD. Um, and I have a younger sister. She's about 5 years younger, and she's pretty normal. And I scared her a lot when I was a kid. Um, but then in high school, when I got to high school, like middle school was hard. I say this a lot. I still cross the street to avoid like a pack of 12-year-old girls because middle school was really hard. Um, but uh, I got by. I survived. I had my friends. They were pretty good friends. And then I found high school. I didn't find high school. High school found me, I guess. And I was invited by someone that I was sort of friends with to hang out with the straight edge kids in high school, which like is a really big scene in South Orange County. I think it's how a bunch of cool South Orange County kids rebel. And I thought I found my community, even though I didn't really care for hardcore music at the time. I still don't. I was definitely a poser, I guess. Um, but I found my community, and I didn't want to drink or do drugs, and so it was great. Um, and then like that was really hard though. The people in that scene aren't really nice. They didn't really weren't that welcoming to girls in general. Um, and it was my awakening into being like used by boys and men. Uh, and It was a journey, but I found my community and I had friends that I thought were my friends, and that is a reoccurring reoccurring theme in my life. Um, and we're just going to remove you. And So then I had my first drink at 18. My first drink was a 40 of Old English. I thought it would be cool if that was because I was so cool in South Orange County that I thought it would be cool if that was my first drink ever. And I got drunk, and I remember it being awesome. The little I do remember. And then I kept drinking, and there were a lot of good times, as there tend to be in the beginning. And then there were a lot of bad times. There were a lot of me getting in. I've never been in a physical fight, but in like lots of like fights with people, like verbal fights, or, me being a tough guy, or me embarrassing myself, or me being like saying I wanted to kill myself at parties. Like there was a lot of that going on. And it was mess, but the good times were good. And it was nice to forget, to get out of my brain, and calm down a little bit and, um, you know, turn my brain off. And, a lot of the reason that I know that I hear in these meetings that a lot of people drink, escape myself, I guess. Uh, and then um, 20, at 20 years old, I moved to Taiwan, to study Chinese. I was really going through a rough spot. Um, and my family business works with factories over there. And so the opportunity sort of arose. Um, and we, my dad had this opportunity for me to go to school, and I was going to help at the factory and learn Chinese and all this stuff. And I was only supposed to be there 3 months, and then that turned to 6 months, and then 6 months turned into 9, and then 9 months turned into almost a year. But SARS came, which, most people didn't know what SARS was or don't remember SARS, but until COVID happened. But they shut down all the flights and stuff, so I got out of there. But that time was spent. I learned a lot of Chinese. I could speak Chinese. I can't speak anymore, so if you don't use it, you lose it. But I I drank a lot. I partied a lot. The drinking culture over there, especially, it was like college. I didn't go to college, so there's a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, a lot of all you can drink, bars, which is insane. A lot of drinking outside of the 7-Eleven there. A lot of fighting, verbal fighting again with boys, and me thinking I was crazy. And then when I came back, I was diagnosed with bipolar. When I was in high school, I was diagnosed with depression. Um, but it didn't seem like that was really totally the whole story. And so when I was like 23, I was diagnosed, 22, 23, I was diagnosed with bipolar. And I thought that's what I had, but until like a couple of years ago. But that was when I first started going to support groups. And I really, I think that helped me survive those first years of being diagnosed with a mental illness and accepting that I wasn't like everybody else, and trying to tell myself that I'm not broken and all this stuff. But it was really when I felt like supported by people, and I found my love of support groups, even though I didn't really stick with that or any for the following years. And then after that, I had many alcoholic boyfriends. I was also letting, uh, I wouldn't say this then. I would say I'm respecting myself. I'm making my own choices. But now looking back at the choices I made in men, um, I wouldn't choose those men sober, and I wouldn't do those things sober. So I think that's, a lot. It was a lot of me wanting to be accepted and me wanting to fit in and using my body to do that. But then I had a lot of alcoholic boyfriends. And then I got into roller derby, and that is a really fun scene where you make 60 new best girlfriends, and you go out and you skate and you hit each other, and then you go drink afterwards. So more drinking, lots of drinking, lots of community. Um, and it was awesome. I wanted community. I thought I found my community. This is a reoccurring theme. And it was great, but it was something a very ADHD thing that I do, that I've always done, is really get involved in something, and then when I don't want to do it anymore, I just drop it. And so I did stay friends with a lot of people, but it didn't interest me anymore. I think it's because I wasn't getting better. I've never been very particularly athletic. So um, I basically dropped that, but I had friends, and I had friends who, were into drugs. And so I made a really good friend, and she had been in rehab and different recovery circles and stuff on and off throughout her whole life. But at this point, she was off the wagon, and we were drinking a lot together, partying, and she was a good source for cocaine, and so I kind of fell into that. And then we went to she got invited by some people that she knew to it was Easter, to a party on a boat, and the captain of the boat, it was like a sailboat. I was like drinking and barfing over the side, and he took really good care of me. And then I sort of chased him down, and we started a 3.5 year relationship. And I had not really known, like, again, like I thought my parents were alcoholics, but I had not really known this level of alcoholism. He was hiding it from me. He was, uh, and I thought like we would be on the same level, and then it just rotted his brain. When I moved from my house, when my parents were moving out, or when my mom was moving out of my childhood home, he was there a lot, and we found tons and tons and tons of stashed, like the pocket flask size plastic vodka bottles everywhere. He and I eventually broke up because I kept catching him drinking when he said he wasn't. And I was like, you're choosing booze over me. And of course, I know now that that's not really how it works, but it felt like that's how it worked. And I couldn't take the lying, I couldn't take the sneaking. And that was the end of that. And he eventually died from his alcoholism after we were broken up. Um, and it was hard for me, and it still was surprising. But now knowing what I know about addiction and stuff, it makes more sense. But I'm glad that I wasn't around for that, because I don't think I could have handled it, and I probably would have just drank more, and probably I could have ended up where he was. But I was at that time, I was carrying, since I lived on the sailboat with him, and I was carrying around bottles, and I always had bottles of Jameson. I would buy them from Vons, because if you bought 6 bottles, you got like 10% off. And so I would always have like several full-size bottles of Jameson, and I would drink them, drive them. I was drinking them before I went to anything. I was late to go see David Sedaris, who is one of my favorite authors, and we had really good seats, and I was meeting this girl there, and I was late to go. And then, so I sat in the back. I don't remember a thing he said. I was drinking beforehand. Don't remember anything he said. And then at the end, apparently he always does like a book signing afterwards. And so I was first in line, and then I asked him to sign a postcard that was just sitting on the table that was advertising something that like wasn't even his book or anything. And he's like, and I was like, will you sign this? And I'm sure I was fucking wasted. And he was like, no. And so I just I was like, okay. And then I turned around and left and went and drove home as drunk as I was, and probably went to go drink more. I drank before, so like some of the main things I remember, like drinking out of my truck. I was drinking all the time, but another main thing I would remember drinking out of was like, it was like family. We had a family Thanksgiving at Disneyland Hotel, and they do like a big buffet, and there's characters, and I drank a lot before that, and I don't remember much of it. And so and I just thought I thought that was better. It was better for me to be drunk at these things. And I don't know if other people could tell how drunk I was, but I was drinking tons and tons of Jameson. And my diet primarily consisted of Jameson, the occasional burrito, and cocaine. I was down to like 120 pounds, which is very skinny for me. My period stopped, and I thought I was pregnant for a while. They just said I was too skinny. And then I sort of, and I was hanging out. I was hanging out downtown LA at this time. And I was one of my favorite bars down there, was called King Eddie. It was a bar that Bukowski used to drink at, and they would open at 7. I would be there at 7. I was walking around the streets of Skid Row in the middle of the night. I was sleeping in my car. I don't know how I'm still alive. And then in 2012, on OkCupid, I met this guy, and I thought he was wonderful, and he was in a relationship. And he told me all these weird stories about how his girlfriend was the mistaken one, and she thought they were engaged, but he didn't propose. He just bought her a ring. It was like this, looking back now, like even like looking back then, it was a very convoluted story. But 2012 was probably the worst year of my life. He liked to drink, um, but he didn't like how much I drank, and he didn't want me to quit drinking, which I feel like is common a common theme I've heard in these rooms a lot too. I'm fun when I'm drinking, but like, don't drink that much, Mary. My dad, my whole life I'd heard the saying that one is too many, 100's never enough, and that is definitely my case. And so it was like, oh, just have one, Mary, and it's like, okay, I'll have one. And so with this guy, like we would drink and stuff, and we would fight. He was so mean. Um, he would break up with me and go back to the other girl, and I was fine with it. And I wasn't fine with it, but like I was fine when he would come crawling back to me. I moved him into my place in LA. Um, and but he did not like my downtown LA lifestyle. And so in April of 2012, it was raining. I had been drinking, but I was not as drunk as I could have been, but I was tired. But there's no excuses here. And a guy was like asking me if I wanted to like stay with him because I was too drunk to drive home. And I don't think anything would have happened. But I knew that this guy I was seeing wouldn't have liked it. So I was driving home to South Orange County, and it was raining, and I fell asleep, and I hydroplaned and totaled my car. Um, One of the worst, lowest parts of my life that could have been my rock bottom was getting that DUI. I broke this side window with my face, and I already had a scar here from when I was little. I fell into a couch when I was jumping on it, but the glass like gave me a new scar here. And the one of the lowest points of my life was having to call my parents. So my phone was dying, and I had to call my parents. I was in Norwalk, which is like right on the LA line still. And the last thing I remember is I need to pull over and fall asleep, and take a nap. But there was like in LA, there's like lots of like freeway off ramp. Like I didn't want to go onto like the 605 or the 710, and so I was waiting for the next exit. And my phone was dying, and so and there were no other cars on the road. It was like 3 a.m, and I was looking down at my phone trying to get, like, it was plugged in, and I was trying to call my parents to let them know what was going on. Um, and like I could, like, blood was dripping out of my head like onto my phone. And then my dad came to the hospital, and while the doctor was like wiping the glass out of my head, and the look on my dad's face of just like sheer disappointment, like, how did we get here? Um, was like, that is like a look that is seared into my brain. And I wish that was my rock bottom. I had to go to DUI classes, and they were fine. Um, I had to go to AA, and it was obviously before Zoom. And you just had to get initials on like a tiny slip of paper. So I just had a couple people like initial the paper, because I went to one AA meeting, and the people there were like, so it's way more alcoholic than I was. And I just didn't relate to their stories. And I was like, this isn't for me. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm fine. I think one of the ladies talked about having to decide between keeping her electricity on, and she had a child on a ventilator, or buying booze. And I was like, I'm fine. Like, all I did was crash my car, and I make bad choices. So I just kept drinking. But I did vow I would never drink and drive again. I lost my license. I didn't have a car, so they couldn't make me put interlock in anything. And I took the bus, and I did my stuff, and I moved to Portland. Um, so this is 2013. Portland was awesome. I didn't have I met a great group of girlfriends who I'm still friends with today. Um, and I didn't have any sources for cocaine. I really like cider. I gained a lot of weight back. I still wasn't driving. And then I got a car, and then I started drinking and driving again, because I didn't mean to. I didn't want to. Sober me wouldn't have said that's a good idea. But when I'm drunk, it's like I'm not that drunk and I can drive. And luckily, nothing ever happened more with my driving career in that. But there were some scary moments and some times that I was like, why am I doing this? But I continue to do that. In 2014, I met the person that would become my husband. Um, he had a lot of money. We both like to drink. We would drink. I stepped up, like I could afford like fancy cocktails, and we would go out to nice meals and drink 3 bottles of wine. And so my drinking changed, but it was still, I want all of the booze. I want it all. And he didn't like my as much as I drank, but he didn't want me to quit drinking. And so my drinking, I was still the problem in the relationship, but he definitely has his own drinking problems. Um, in 2017, and he was opening a brewery and a pizza place, and it took 4 years. But in 2017, we got married. In 2018, the brewery opened, and I was kept being told I would be a part of it. And I've always wanted to work in a kitchen. I was very excited. Um, and then he like basically his business partner like kept telling me he didn't want me involved, telling him he didn't want me involved. He and my husband would tell me, oh, she won't be involved, and he would tell me he'll come around. And so that was a big thing. And then at some point I got 86 from that place because uh my husband I was drinking all day and I was doing coke, and he was leaving the bar to go to the dentist, and he was like, please go home. We got in a fight about it. I was like, I'm not going home, I'm fine, I'm drinking. And then in my mind, I didn't sexually harass an employee, but HR got a hold of me, so I got 86 from um my husband's restaurant and brewery because I was drinking and doing drugs, and he used that as another excuse. And at this point, I had lots of coke connections, and we had money. I was always the person with coke on me. Um, it was constant. Uh, and that was kind of the end of my marriage. He left the bar after that for other reasons that were sort of related to it. He let himself be bought out, but then like that was sort of the end of us. I think because he was like, you blaming me for whatever happened there. Um, and then I met a new circle of friends around this right around this very time. I met a new circle of friends, and again, I found my community. We were all drinking and doing copious amounts of cocaine. One of the girls was her boyfriend was a dealer, so there was plenty around. It was great, but I was nice being around people who I felt like my husband was like disgusted by me. And it was nice being around people who thought I was smart and funny and interesting again. And so I fell in love with one of those people. My husband and I opened our relationship up um, with my pressure. Uh, but one of the rules was don't fall in love with anybody else. And I did fall in love with somebody else. And COVID came. And so my husband and I broke up in 2020, and I moved in with this guy that I fell in love with. And that was great. We were partying. Everything was great. We lived, our roommate was his friend, one of our other party friends. It was awesome. COVID, nobody was working. We were partying. It was awesome. And I'm saying that very sarcastically. It was, it was, it seemed awesome at the time. There were a lot of good times, but the bad times were definitely starting to outweigh the good. And his and my relationship started deteriorating. And I have this theme where my husband would do this, and people would do this, and it's like where they start not inviting me places, and I'm the partner, like, why aren't I invited? And so then I was coming down to LA a lot because that's where my family is. I have a niece and nephew down here, and that's where I met Daniel Los Angeles in 2022. He was coming out of he was coming out of he'd been trying to get sober on and off for 10 years, and he was coming out of being on the wagon, and I didn't even know what recovery or sobriety or whatever looked like, but I knew that we were sneaking around because I was in a relationship. We were sneaking around because my brother-in-law and family, who I met him through, don't didn't particularly like me at the time. His drinking, we were sneaking around because he didn't want them to know he was drinking again. It was like I was in on all these secrets. It was so fun. We were having so much fun, and we were fighting all the time. Um, and it would be great. We would get sober the next day and be like, "Why do we fight? We communicate. We're so wonderful." And then drink, and he would say, "Okay, we're only going to have a couple drinks. I have to wake up early in the morning," and then I would want to stay at the bar because that 100 is never enough. On and on and on and on and on, until Halloween of 2022. We dressed up like we dressed up from Royal Tenenbaums, like Margot and Richie, and I was so excited to have these costumes. And we got in a fight by 10 o'clock. He went home. I was like, well, I still need booze. We left the bar we were at. I was like, I still need booze, and the liquor store on my corner had closed. So I drove to a liquor store and I bought a bottle of Jameson, and it was like 11. And I was like, well, if I want to conserve this bottle, well, I can still go buy other things. So I went to a bar, and then I drove to another bar. And I was borrowing my car was in Portland. So, and my mom has a car, and my brother-in-law and my sister have a car, and the driveways here are single driveways. So I took both sets of keys over. I was like, I'll take whatever car is at the back, so I don't have to like move cars. So I drove to 3 bars. I left my credit card at the third bar, because it is very confusing to me now, because some bars keep your card, some bars keep your card, some don't. And so I went home. I fell asleep in the car, and then that next morning uh, my brother-in-law went out to go to work, and the car smelled like weed, and the seat was pulled forward, and he was like, "What the hell, Mary? You drove my car drunk." And I was like, "But I didn't drive it drunk. Like, I parked and I slept in it." So in my mind, that's a totally normal thing. I was sleeping in my car all the time. Totally not a red flag. Um, and then so that was like a nightmare. He already didn't like me. He already didn't like me and Daniel. It was a whole thing. Um, but the next day so that was Monday. On Tuesday, I had to go back and pick up my credit card, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna pick my credit card. And it was happy hour. And so I was like, oh, and like the girl behind the bar was drinking. And I was like, I'll have one drink. And then I think I was there till midnight drinking. And then, but during the time, she's like telling me about AA. And my mom is texting me, and I was like, my mom is like, have you thought about going to AA? And I was like, ugh, mom, get out of here. And so the girl behind the bar, who's drinking behind the bar, um, is telling me about AA, and there's this AA clubhouse right down the street from me. She's like, it's great. She's like, I'm clearly not doing it now, but it's great. It's helpful. Um, so I went home at like midnight that night, started in on my bottle of Jameson that I had from the night before. And I was like, okay, let me try this thing out. So I went to on that Wednesday and that Thursday, I went to Zoom AA meetings because they do hybrid. Um, and I was drinking. It's at 12:30 in the afternoon, and I was drinking my whiskey out of like a coffee cup. Um, and then on that Friday, I had like, and my mom sent me a screenshot of this like same AA place. So I was like, okay, the universe is trying to fucking tell me something. So on that Friday, I went in I walked over, went to this in-person meeting, and I walked out. I came home. I poured out the couple inches left in that Jameson bottle, and I haven't drank since. And if you know me, you know I don't like wasting beverages of any kind, especially not booze. So it was definitely like more of a symbolic thing for me. I also knew that if I started drinking it, then I might just keep drinking. So I was like, I need to do this sober in a clear mind. And yeah, I haven't drank since. During those few days before, Daniel and I were broken up from Halloween, but I was the lowest I'd ever been. I have never called a suicide hotline, but I was on the verge of doing that or just killing myself. And Daniel came over and we drove around in his car a little bit, and I was like sobbing. I was like, I don't know what to do. Um, I don't want to quit drinking, but like, I guess I'll give that a shot rather than killing myself. And I'm really glad I did because now I'm here. Um, and so that brings us to now, I guess. So I have, like I said, I have 586 days sober. I found this meeting. I found secular AA pretty. The meeting I went to first was traditional, and there were a couple ladies there that they, if you go to an in-person meeting and it's your first time, I think they could tell, and so they gave me their numbers, and they were really helpful to me those first days. Um, and I realized one of the things I realized was that I didn't want to keep apologizing for things, then keep doing the same thing. And so I apologized. Like I had a very heartfelt sit down with my brother-in-law. Um, and I was like, I'm not drinking anymore. And I don't know if anybody thought that this would happen or like this would stick. Um, I kind of tried to make better connection with my family, my sister and brother-in-law after that. And I think they were kind of like, yeah, sure. But now my relationship with my sister is getting better every day. Um, Finding this particular meeting though was the game changer for me. I am so grateful for all of the people. I've AA rooms. I think that Jerome has said that it's like our dive bar, and I really feel like it is. It's so many different personalities. People come and go. You don't know why they're gone, or something happened and they leave, and then the next day a new person comes and doesn't even know that this person that used to be here all the time was like a fixture of the meeting, and it's so strange to me. But it's nice not being the one that is ousted. It's nice not being the one that fucks up. um it's nice not being the one, who is like, oh, well, yeah, you didn't miss anything when you met Mary. And I feel so grateful for the people I've met in this room, the relationships I've made in real life from this room. um the the people, even the people that like I've met who are gone, they've been shitty or whatever. So they didn't last that long. Like they've taught me lessons. I've learned about boundaries in this room, which I'm still working on. Doing service is huge for me, and that's why I don't want to. I hear a lot about like people burning out on service, but I don't want that to happen to me. And I don't feel like it is. I take on roles that I think I can handle, and nothing has been too crazy yet. That might change now that I'm pregnant. I'm 6 months pregnant. I'm gonna have a baby, which is fucking crazy. I am a totally different person now, and I have a lot of people to thank. I have a lot of programs to thank. DBT changed my life, but really, this room and trusting the process and playing the tape forward and all that shit that you hear when you first start coming. And you're like, oh God, this all sounds so dumb and I don't want to do any of it. I just want to drink. That's all helped me get to this point. And I found a community that, as I've said, I feel like community was a thread throughout my story, and wanting to find a community and be a part of community. And I feel like I finally found a community that I can trust and love. And I haven't done anything yet that they've been like, we don't like you, or get out of here, or there's been nothing where, I feel like particularly excluded on purpose. And uh I like the forever non-professional. I like the low stakes of doing service because it's very supportive. um So that's my story, I guess. I'm sure just like most times I hear, there's lots I wanted to say, but I didn't say it. But thank you so much, Danielle, for hosting. And I love you all. Thanks.